If there is one thing that draws as much attention as the stunning beauty of a country's landscapes, it is the level of dirt and pollution that taint its environment. A single video posted online can reveal disturbing scenes that linger in the viewer's mind. People cooking meals on filthy sidewalks, children playing dangerously close to open sewers, rivers that have turned black from heaps of garbage. For example, images of India frequently flood social media feeds, showing scenes of overwhelming pollution and unsanitary conditions. Yet, despite the notoriety these images garner, the reality is that India is not even among the most heavily polluted countries in the world, nor is it in the top 2 or 3. The history of places where dirt has become an integral part of the landscape extends far beyond what many might imagine. Today, Bellamundo invites you on a journey through the 10 most contaminated and dirtiest nations on the planet. Before we delve into this list, it is important to clarify the criteria used to determine these rankings. We are not simply talking about litter scattered on the ground or unpleasant odors wafting through the air. The assessment was conducted by the Swiss-based company IQ Air, which analyzed dozens of countries based on multiple factors. These included levels of air pollution, the accumulation of waste, lack of adequate sanitation facilities, the presence of open sewers, and contaminated water sources. In essence, the ranking considers everything that renders an environment dirty, hazardous, and almost unlivable with dignity. Starting at number 10, we find Burundi. Let's begin our exploration in Africa, a continent where a small country can nonetheless be overwhelmed by dirt and foul air. Burundi, nestled in the very heart of East Africa, exemplifies a stark case of environmental neglect. It doesn't take a detailed inspection to notice the severity of the problem. Nearly every household here still prepares meals using methods that date back centuries, burning wood or charcoal as their primary fuel. Virtually all families rely on solid fuels directly within their homes, resulting in a persistent cloud of smoke that engulfs entire villages. This creates what can only be described as a soot-laden fog, hanging heavily in the air and obscuring the surroundings. Compounding this issue is the absence of organized waste collection systems. With no proper infrastructure for garbage disposal, residents often resort to burning waste openly or dumping refuse into rivers, further polluting water sources and intensifying environmental degradation. The smell of this toxic mixture, combining garbage, smoke, and sewage, is almost impossible to describe without experiencing it firsthand. Burundi also ranks as one of the poorest and most densely populated countries in the world. While the amount of waste produced per person is relatively low, due to economic constraints, the small amount of waste generated ends up scattered in wastelands or polluting streams. Basic sanitation services are almost non-existent, making the health risks even more severe. Breathing conditions in Burundi are comparable to smoking a pack of cigarettes every day, as air pollution levels are approximately 8 times higher than the safe limit established by the World Health Organization, a statistic that speaks volumes about the dire environmental state of the country. Moving on to number 9, we encounter Rwanda. At first glance, Rwanda may seem surprisingly clean and well-maintained. The streets in the capital, Kigali, are remarkably tidy, and since Div Taisachi Vosum, plastic bags have been officially banned, with large-scale cleanup initiatives carried out regularly. In urban areas, trash on the streets is a rare sight, and the government's efforts to maintain cleanliness are evident. However, the true challenge lies not on the surface but beneath the visible exterior, specifically, in the air that envelops the country. A dull, gray haze hangs over much of Rwanda, reminiscent of a heavy drape shrouding the landscape. This persistent fog is primarily caused by the uncontrolled combustion of wood and charcoal, which remains the main source of energy for most Rwandans. In rural homes, nearly every household relies on biomass, clay stoves that emit thick smoke directly into the atmosphere. This widespread use of biomass fuels results in significant air pollution that is often invisible to the eye but deadly in its effects. The country's reliance on these traditional energy sources contributes to a smog that blankets the nation, impacting air quality and public health on a large scale. In addition to the ongoing issues of industrial pollution and vehicle emissions, another significant contributor to environmental degradation in this region is the traditional practice among farmers of burning crop residues after harvest. Each evening, as the sun sets behind the hills, the atmosphere is no longer shrouded in natural fog but becomes laden with thick layers of soot that settle quietly on the landscape. This persistent haze is a stark reminder of human activity, and because Rwanda is a country characterized by its rugged, mountainous terrain, the polluted air becomes trapped within the valleys, almost as if confined inside an invisible bottle, unable to escape into the open sky. Consequently, the local population breathes air that is, alarmingly, 8 times more contaminated than the safety thresholds established by the World Health Organization. In other words, regardless of how meticulously the streets are cleaned or how pristine the urban environment appears on the surface, the very air that residents inhale remains filled with dirt and pollutants. This situation serves as a stark warning. Simply banning single-use plastic bags, while beneficial, is insufficient if the fundamental reliance on fire and smoke for everyday survival remains unaddressed. Moving further across the map, we arrive at Rwanda, neighboring country, a larger and more densely populated nation in East Africa, where the problem of air pollution persists with equal severity. Number 8 on our list is Uganda. This nation stands as a prime example of a country where multiple forms of pollution converge simultaneously, creating a complex and dangerous environmental landscape. Let us consider the capital city, Kampala, which is home to more than 6 million residents. The streets here are characterized by chaos, traffic jams, honking, and a relentless flow of vehicles that often seem to belch black smoke into the air as if they are on fire. The city's thoroughfares are crowded with aging cars and trucks, many of which lack any form of emissions control, contributing heavily to the smog. Alongside these, thousands of motorcycles dart through traffic, their engines emitting noxious fumes, further compounding the air quality issues. On ordinary days, the experience of breathing in Kampala can feel akin to standing amidst a giant exhaust pipe, an overwhelming mixture of fumes and particulate matter. This dire situation is intensified by the widespread practice of burning waste, coupled with a persistent dependence on firewood and charcoal for domestic cooking. In nearly every household, the kitchen emits clouds of smoke, which seep into the living space, making cooking an invisible yet hazardous process. The problem is worsened by the inefficiency of waste management services, which are unable to keep pace with the volume of garbage generated. As a result, refuse accumulates in vacant lots and is often set ablaze in situ, producing a pungent smell, a confusing blend of melting rubber, dry shrubs, and the acrid scent of burning plastic, filling the air with a noxious aroma that has become a familiar part of everyday life, especially on the outskirts of Kampala. The broken, unpaved dirt roads in these areas stir up clouds of dust with every passing vehicle, obscuring the sky even during clear weather. The result is an atmosphere that is 8 times more polluted than the limits deemed safe by the World Health Organization. Unlike Rwanda, which manages to keep its visible trash relatively contained, Uganda's environment offers no such refuge. Litter and waste are ubiquitous, scattered across the streets, piled in heaps, and floating in the air as fine particles. The country's air is thick with soot, and wastewater often ends up in open drains or makeshift channels, further contaminating the environment. Every year, thousands of lives are lost prematurely due to the health impacts of this relentless pollution, a tragic toll that underscores the urgency of addressing these intertwined crises. Number 7 on our list is Nepal. This nation is globally renowned for its majestic mountains, ancient temples, and breathtaking natural beauty, a landscape that inspires awe and reverence. Yet, beneath this idyllic exterior lies a less visible but equally pressing problem. The air quality in Kathmandu, the capital city, is often dangerously poor. The city is nestled within a deep valley surrounded by towering Himalayan peaks, which, on the surface, offers a stunning backdrop. However, this geographical configuration creates a serious challenge, as it prevents the free flow of air, causing smoke, dust, and pollutants to become trapped within the enclosed space. The result is a stagnant, heavy atmosphere that becomes especially oppressive during the dry months. During these times, the mountains on the horizon are barely perceptible through the yellowish haze that hangs over the city, obscured by a sprawling brown cloud of dirt and smog. It is notable that the average Nepalese produces a relatively small amount of waste each day compared to other nations. Nonetheless, the limited capacity of the waste collection system means that even minimal refuse quickly overwhelms the city's infrastructure. When landfills reach their capacity or the waste collectors cease their work, the accumulated garbage begins to pile up directly on the streets, creating makeshift dumps that further degrade air quality and urban cleanliness. This cycle of inadequate waste disposal, coupled with the widespread when the skies open with rain, the streets and alleys of the city are transformed into rivers of filthy, disgusting sludge. This toxic mixture, born from accumulated trash and organic waste, flows relentlessly through narrow passageways, creating a sickening sight and an even worse smell. As it moves, it attracts hordes of rats scurrying in search of food and shelter, and swarms of flies that hover over the filth, further contaminating the environment. The problem is compounded by the fact that many families still rely on traditional wood fires to cook their daily meals. The smoke from these fires billows upward in dense, dark plumes, saturating the air with soot and harmful particulates, adding to the already heavy pollution. Meanwhile, the sanitation infrastructure remains desperately inadequate. A significant portion of sewage is discharged directly into the city's rivers, most notably the Bagmati, which has long since devolved into a murky, blackwater channel. It resembles a toxic sewer more than a river, its waters thick with waste and pollutants. While tourists trek along mountain trails in search of fresh, invigorating air, the residents of the city are forced to breathe in thick smog that hangs heavily over their neighborhoods. They live amid mounds of scattered garbage and watch helplessly as their once pure rivers are transformed into open sewers, choked with filth and refuse. Leaving behind the towering Himalayas and heading eastward into Central Asia, we arrive at the next country on our list. Although it seldom makes headlines when discussing pollution, it earns its place because of a troubling combination of its Soviet legacy and ongoing unsustainable practices. Number 6 on the list is Tajikistan. Tajikistan is one of the Central Asian nations that inherited a substantial part of the heavy industry left behind by the collapsing Soviet Union. This industrial inheritance brought with it a legacy of severe environmental degradation, which the country struggles to address even today, yet remains largely unspoken. Tajikistan consistently ranks among the top 10 nations worldwide with the worst air quality. The winter months are especially brutal, with temperatures plummeting so low that almost every household depends heavily on coal and firewood to heat their homes. In the capital city of Dushanbe, a large portion of the pollution in the air originates from domestic stoves and fireplaces, each emitting smoke from their chimneys. These plumes of smoke rise into the valleys, becoming trapped beneath a lid of cold air, creating a persistent haze that blankets the city and the surrounding landscape. But the problem extends far beyond household sources. Tajikistan is home to one of the largest aluminum smelting plants in the entire region, the well-known Taka plant. The pollutants emitted by this industrial giant have caused concern not only locally but also across neighboring countries, which complain that the emissions are responsible for acid rain falling onto their agricultural fields, damaging crops and ecosystems. Additional environmental issues stem from extensive mining operations, chemical industries that lack strict controls, and lax enforcement of environmental regulations. Rivers are heavily polluted by industrial waste, and air quality worsens as pollutants disperse into the atmosphere. Some regions of Tajikistan are arid and desert-like, with landscapes dominated by dry, sandy terrain, which often results in dust storms filled with fine, abrasive particles that sweep across the land. In the capital city of Dushanbe, although the city may appear calm at first glance, the air is thick with pollution and dust, creating an oppressive, dirty atmosphere. Waste is often dumped directly onto open fields, with little regard for proper disposal or recycling. Wastewater from homes and industries flows unchecked into the rivers, further degrading water quality and harming aquatic life. Having explored these lesser-known yet deeply polluted places, where smoke, garbage, and environmental neglect dominate the landscape, our focus shifts to the countries that are far worse. We are now entering the top 5, where the true realm of dirt and pollution begins in earnest. The next country exemplifies a place where dirt is omnipresent, sprawling across every surface, from the ground smeared with feces to the skies obscured by choking clouds of smog over its largest cities. Number 5 on the list is India. A nation immense in every sense of the word, vast in its cultural heritage, enormous in its population, and rapidly advancing in technology, yet sadly, it also bears the burden of unparalleled environmental degradation. To walk through any of its cities is to witness the pervasive presence of dirt in every corner, in the air, on the streets, and even within the rivers that snake through urban landscapes. The roots of this crisis lie in fundamental issues such as sanitation. For many decades, more than half of India's population lacked access to proper toilets, forcing people to resort to open defecation in fields or alleyways. This practice contaminates the environment, spreads disease, and perpetuates the cycle of filth. The absence of adequate sanitation infrastructure means that dirt and waste are ever present, making cleanliness a distant dream for millions. The challenge in countless places across the world, particularly in densely populated and underdeveloped regions, millions of individuals have historically resorted to relieving themselves in open spaces, along the roadsides, in barren wastelands, and along riverbanks. The consequences of this widespread practice are starkly evident. Overwhelming odors permeate the air, fecal matter is scattered indiscriminately across the landscape, and the constant presence of human waste significantly elevates the risk of disease transmission. Recognizing the severity of this issue, government authorities have launched various campaigns aimed at addressing the problem. One notable effort was the SWAT Parade initiative, which pledged the construction of millions of new toilets in an effort to improve sanitation standards. While such measures have led to some marginal improvements, reducing the obvious sights and smells, they have not eradicated the problem entirely. Today, India still holds the unfortunate record as the world leader in the production of untreated human waste. It is estimated that the country generates over 120,000 tons of feces every single day, an incredibly staggering volume that underscores the scale of the challenge. The most troubling aspect of this situation is that many individuals tasked with disposing of this waste do so manually, often without any protective gear, exposing themselves to serious health hazards. These workers, sometimes earning less than 50 cents per day, put their hands directly into sewers and open drains, risking infection and disease with each action. But the issue of pollution extends far beyond land. The air quality in Indian cities ranks among the most polluted in the world. In places like New Delhi, the sky remains enshrouded in a thick layer of smog for weeks at a time, often making it difficult to see the sun or breathe freely. This toxic haze is caused by a combination of factors: fires burning straw in agricultural fields, emissions from aging vehicles, and ongoing construction activities that release vast amounts of dust and fumes into the atmosphere. The combination turns the city into what can only be described as a veritable gas chamber, where inhaling the polluted air on some days is comparable to smoking an entire pack of cigarettes. Water pollution compounds these environmental woes. The sacred Ganges River, revered by millions of Hindus as a symbol of purity and spiritual cleansing, has been transformed into a toxic, lifeless channel. Instead of its waters nourishing life, it now carries an overwhelming mixture of sewage waste, garbage, industrial effluents, and even human remains. Despite the widespread belief that bathing in the Ganges can purify the soul, many of those who enter its waters are unknowingly immersing themselves in a brown, bacteria-laden soup that poses serious health risks. The challenge of restoring this vital river is immense, especially considering the vast population that depends on it and the cultural significance it holds. India's desire for change is evident, but the sheer scale of the problem makes solutions exceedingly complex. With a population exceeding 1 billion people, any attempt at comprehensive reform often feels insufficient, unable to match the magnitude of the crisis. Moving to another region with equally daunting environmental challenges, the Democratic Republic of the Congo presents a paradox of wealth and poverty. Despite its vast expanse, rich in mineral resources, and home to the second-largest tropical rainforest on Earth, the country remains one of the poorest and most environmentally degraded nations. The landscape is marred not only by scattered refuse but also by more serious ecological and health issues: rampant deforestation, pervasive smoke from burning fires, inadequate sewage systems, and the pervasive presence of toxic dust. The majority of the population, over 80%, still relies on traditional fuels such as firewood and charcoal for cooking. Every evening, entire villages are shrouded in a thick, suffocating haze of smoke emitted from countless fires burning in homes and communal spaces. This daily exposure to indoor and outdoor smoke has severe health implications, especially for children and the elderly. Deforestation exacerbates the problem, as illegal logging, uncontrolled fires, and subsistence farming steadily strip away the vital green cover, releasing more soot and reducing the natural ability of the environment to absorb pollutants. The country's rivers, critical arteries of life and commerce, are now in dire straits. Lacking widespread access to wastewater treatment facilities, many of these waterways have become open sewers filled with refuse and industrial waste. In the capital city, Kinshasa, where over 17 million people reside, it is a common sight to see trash floating in streams and children playing dangerously close to polluted ditches. Moreover, the environmental scars go beyond waste and deforestation. Mining activities leave a toxic legacy. Dust containing cobalt, copper, and other heavy metals settles into the soil and water, contaminating the environment and endangering local communities. A particularly tragic event in recent history was the tailings dam failure in neighboring Angola in Dive Taisachi Divadcat Odin, which released contaminated water into the Congo River basin. This catastrophe resulted in the death of countless fish and inflicted suffering on thousands of families who depend on the river for their livelihood and sustenance. Despite its immense natural wealth, every winter, Lahore transforms into a vast, smoldering furnace, a scene reminiscent of a giant, darkened cauldron simmering under the cold sky. The entire city becomes shrouded in a thick, brownish haze, a dense smog that hangs heavily in the air, obscuring the skyline and dimming the sunlight. This toxic cloud is born from a perilous combination of factors: the long-standing use of aging vehicles that emit black, choking exhaust, the widespread burning of agricultural residue, where farmers set fire to leftover crops to prepare for the next planting season, industrial emissions from factories that belch out pollutants without adequate filtration, and the absence of strong winds to carry away these harmful particles. As a result, the air quality in Lahore becomes dangerously compromised, with the concentration of fine particulate matter, tiny particles less than 2.5 microns in diameter, often soaring beyond 70 micrograms per cubic meter. To put this into perspective, this level is more than 14 times higher than what international health standards deem safe for human exposure. What makes the situation even more alarming is that this hazardous smog does not confine itself to a single locale but spreads across multiple cities, turning the entire region into a suffocating corridor of toxic air. In cities like Karachi, Islamabad, and Lahore, the air seems to burn the throats of anyone who ventures outdoors, creating an oppressive environment that affects everyone indiscriminately. Children, the elderly, and those suffering from respiratory conditions like asthma find their health severely compromised. The air pollution crisis is not merely an environmental issue but a dire public health emergency that affects the daily lives of millions. However, the problem extends far beyond the atmosphere. Urban waste management has become an overwhelming challenge, especially in Karachi, a sprawling megacity with a population exceeding 15 million residents. In the poorest neighborhoods, mountains of refuse have accumulated unchecked, often left to rot or, worse, set ablaze right on the streets. These heaps consist of plastic bags, organic waste, discarded electronics, and rubber tires, all burned openly, releasing toxic fumes into the already polluted air. The smell of burning waste is suffocating, assaulting the senses and adding to the environmental burden. In many districts, sanitation infrastructure is virtually non-existent. Canals and streams have been transformed into open sewers, choked with sewage and debris. Outside the urban centers, countless people still resort to defecating in forests or open fields, further contaminating the environment. Water sources are heavily polluted, with contaminated streams and clogged drainage channels contributing to a steady spread of waterborne diseases such as hepatitis and cholera. The overall picture is one of neglect and chaos, where basic sanitation and hygiene are luxuries beyond reach for many. Despite these overwhelming issues, the government of Pakistan, like many others facing similar crises, promises reforms and initiatives aimed at improving the situation. They launch reforestation campaigns intended to restore green cover and attempt to regulate the use of older, more polluting vehicles. Yet, in practice, tangible progress remains painfully slow, hindered by bureaucratic inefficiencies and limited resources. The cycle of pollution and neglect persists, casting a shadow over the future. Turning eastward to Bangladesh, one finds a landscape where pollution has become so ingrained that it appears almost part of the natural scenery. For many years, Bangladesh was ranked among the worst countries globally for air quality, consistently topping charts that measure airborne pollutants. Although it has recently slipped from the very top position, it still remains firmly in the ranks of the most heavily polluted nations. In Dhaka, the capital city, the sky seems to have lost its original blue hue, replaced by a dull, oppressive shade of gray and yellow. It is as if the atmosphere is perpetually cloaked in a smoky fog that seems to emanate from every direction, an ominous haze that never lifts. The sources of this pollution are myriad. Old vehicles belching black smoke, textile factories powered by coal that release continuous plumes of soot, brick kilns emitting relentless clouds of particulate matter, and countless fires burning accumulated garbage in open heaps across the city. On some days, Dhaka appears to be enveloped in a constant, thick fog, but this is not natural mist. It is a toxic, suffocating smoke that hampers visibility and endangers health. The air quality in Bangladesh is alarmingly poor, with average fine particle concentrations reaching nearly 80 micrograms per cubic meter, more than 15 times the safety threshold recommended by health authorities. Such high levels of pollution significantly shorten the average lifespan of the population, especially among vulnerable groups like children and the elderly. Yet, the crisis is not confined merely to the air. The country's rivers, once vital arteries of commerce and sustenance, are now veritable toxic channels. Rapid industrialization, especially in the textile sector, which has made Bangladesh a global hub for garment manufacturing, has come at a steep environmental cost. Many factories, instead of treating their waste, simply dump chemicals directly into river waters. The once vibrant Buriganga River, which supplies when the rain begins to fall, a troubling transformation occurs. The streets and alleys, especially the narrow, winding ones, become pools of floating debris. Garbage, excrement, and discarded plastics are carried along by the water, creating a chaotic and unsanitary landscape. In these confined spaces, the accumulation of filth turns into a perfect breeding ground for disease, fostering conditions ripe for outbreaks of illnesses like cholera and dengue fever. Outside the city centers, in the sprawling suburbs and rural areas, this scene is often considered normal, a daily reality accepted by many residents. The combination of relentless heat, persistent dirt, and stagnant pools of water provides an ideal environment for the proliferation of disease-carrying vectors, leading to recurring health crises. This nation, which has experienced rapid economic and infrastructural development over recent decades, has done so at a significant cost. The environment bears the scars of this progress, and the health of its people suffers as a consequence. Despite occasional efforts to make improvements, the country continues to rank alarmingly high in terms of pollution and sanitation issues. In fact, it still holds the position of being the second most polluted country in the world, only slightly behind the worst-ranked nation. But if you believe that no other country could surpass the levels of dirtiness observed in India, Pakistan, or Bangladesh, then you haven't yet learned about Chad. Nestled in the very heart of Africa's Sahel region, Chad records an astonishing average of 90 micrograms of fine particulate matter per cubic meter of air. To put this into perspective, this level of pollution is 18 times higher than the upper limit recommended by the World Health Organization for safe air quality. The sources of this pollution are not the sprawling industrial complexes or the modern, high-powered vehicles often associated with urban smog, but rather the most fundamental and natural factors. First and foremost, the Sahara Desert's powerful seasonal storms play a major role. Chad is home to the Bodel Depression, one of the largest natural sources of airborne dust on the entire planet. When the wind blows strongly across the desert, it picks up vast quantities of fine sand and dust, which are then carried over great distances. A single gust of wind can turn the streets of towns like N'Djamena into a blinding yellow haze, effectively making entire neighborhoods disappear behind a veil of sand. Adding to this already daunting scenario is the widespread practice of burning wood and charcoal for cooking. With electricity being scarce or unreliable in most areas, whole villages depend on open fires daily to prepare meals. The smoke from these fires permeates homes, courtyards, and streets alike, infiltrating every corner. This household air pollution escapes into the environment, affecting everyone indiscriminately, children, elders, and every person in between. The cumulative effect is a persistent cloud of smoke that not only harms indoor air quality but also contributes to outdoor pollution, further compounding health risks across the country. The vehicle fleet that crawls along the dirt roads is small but highly toxic. Most of the old pickup trucks and motorbikes operate without any emission controls or filters, belching out thick black smoke that mingles with the relentless desert dust. This combination creates a toxic cocktail in the air, one that is especially hazardous to respiratory health. The situation on the ground is equally dire when it comes to sanitation and water management. Only 1 in every 10 people has access to proper sewerage systems, leaving the majority of the population to relieve themselves outdoors in open spaces. This practice leads to the contamination of water sources, rivers, wells, and agricultural lands, further exacerbating the cycle of pollution and disease. The country's water bodies become repositories for waste, threatening both human health and the environment. Today, Chad holds the unfortunate distinction of being the world's champion in dirt and dust, not because it is an industrial powerhouse, but precisely because it lacks the most basic infrastructure and sanitation facilities. The absence of sewage systems, clean energy sources, waste management services, and fundamental living conditions underscores the severity of its situation. It is a stark reminder of how environmental neglect and infrastructural deficiency can create a landscape dominated by mud, dust, and pollution. This overview concludes our list of the world's most polluted and unclean countries. What struck you the most about these descriptions? Were you already aware of such conditions before? Take a moment to reflect and share your thoughts in the comments below. I hope you found this exploration eye-opening. If you enjoyed this discussion, please consider supporting us by liking the video and subscribing to the channel, so you won't miss future content that dives into important global issues. Your support enables us to continue uncovering stories like these and sharing them with a wider audience. Be sure to watch the next video that appears on the screen. I am confident you will find it compelling. And don't forget to leave a comment telling us which country you'd like us to explore next. Thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.